Do you think 5'11" is going to be an obstacle to your success?
Not at all. And I don't think anything's a disadvantage if you have the heart, the determination, and the will to win. You could be 6'6", 10 foot. If you got the ability, I don't think it's a disadvantage.
Fight fans, welcome back. In the world of boxing, there's an old adage, and that's that a good big man will always beat a good little man.
You can beat the average big ones, but you can't beat the elite big ones.
This guy's winning fights because he's big. He leans on guys, he lays on them. That's how he wins. But when you take away his advantage, then what do you have?
After all, in a game of millimeters, the inches matter. But make no mistake, there are still plenty of David versus Goliath moments in which the smaller man comes out on top.
Seem a little bit shaky here, minute and a half into the first round.
So as we prepare to re-roll the undisputed dice, we'll witness a man once declared a pumped-up middleweight who's not only conquered his own Goliath, but all of the ones that mattered.
Because the power is not in the fact that somebody is big or small, it's in your spirit.
And while the journey is far from over, it offers the perfect time to reflect on some of the special talents that have defied odds, critics, and the laws of physics to overcome far bigger and more imposing men.
Left hand lays out David Price. The towel's in.
Hit subscribe if you're new, or just the thumbs up button if you want to help us out, and get ready to punch way above your weight. Because in the squared circle, size doesn't always matter.
You smiled a little bit when I pointed out his size. You obviously don't think size in this fight is going to matter all that much.
One of the biggest size disparities, even by heavyweight standards, came in an obscure Aussie dust-up in 2021, as the 7'1" juggernaut Julius took on unbeaten 6' slugger Haye.
And most fighters over here don't teach defense; they just teach offense. I'm cut from a whole different type of cloth of fighters. You know what I mean? I grew up with the Thomas Hearns, the Marvis Haglers, the Sugar Ray Leonards.
Long was best known as David Tua's sparring partner, but he'd also gained notoriety for his mid-fight taunts and showboating. Sadly, Julius was born into an exceptional era of heavyweights and some huge hitters. And his chin, even all the way up there in the clouds, couldn't take the licks. So whilst the big man would play his usual role in this fight too, where Haye was getting particularly good at landing shots on bigger men, Long was getting good at receiving them.
Big Julius. From the southpaw stance.
He's holding on, he's won, but he's down.
The ropes are keeping him up. 10 seconds to go in the round.
I just can't imagine what it's like for a heavyweight. You know, obviously they have their optimum weight, what they want to fight at, but he's massive. He really is a big lump.
Take an inch or two off both men, and Michael Hunter versus Alexander Ustinov was a near identical scenario to Fury Usyk.
I fought in as an amateur, as a super heavyweight, and I fought big guys before. It's kind of a familiar territory.
After losing to Usyk himself as a cruiserweight, Hunter would take the leap of faith up to heavyweight a year earlier than the Ukrainian.
And it's always fun to have new blood here in the heavyweight division. Oh, big right hand, down goes Goliath!
He was successful in his first few fights and stopped a 6'6" Martin Bakole. However, an even bigger brute was on the horizon.
It's a big advantage to have in boxing, a good big and usually it's a good little, and as they say, Hunter fired up and straight away to work.
Despite it being a short notice call-up, Hunter's speed, skills, and angles were a nightmare for Ustinov.
And Hunter with a huge right.
His best work and the deciding moment, just like Usyk against Fury, came in round 9.
Still throwing good shots against the bigger man in Usyk.
But where the Gypsy King recovered, this giant could not.
He just chopped that tree down. Did you see it go timber? Did you see that?
Michael Hunter giving 5 stone of weight away, coming in at very late notice. He's done it again. It's a great story.
He was one of 13 children, 10 boys. 2 of his brothers are dead. Of the remaining 7, 6 have served time for felonies.
As a 5'6" heavyweight that captured world titles and whooped far bigger men than himself, Dwight Muhammad Qawi might be the perfect poster boy for this kind of feature.
George Foreman felt those punches.
A man who battled a 6'4" George Foreman and gave a 6'2" Evander Holyfield his toughest night's work.
I lost 15 pounds in fighting that guy and trying to keep him off of me.
Bizarre for a man just an inch taller than Gervonta Davis and Manny Pacquiao.
I thought maybe if I stayed out, that wouldn't get hit as much, but that's wrong. Because if you're out like that and you're short like I was, it is, you know, you get hit on the end of the punch and of the power. But inside, I slipped, got a better stop the punch, a better shot, you know, not get hit. So I learned that.
However, one of Qawi's most impressive wins came against Leon Spinks.
Kagi is very oddly built. Some would say as wide as he is tall. The height disadvantage has not been a problem for him in many past fights.
A 6-inch height difference paired with 6 rounds of punishment.
Best flurry of the fight for Leon, who landed 2 left. And now Kagi is sticking his tongue out at him, taunting him. You can't hurt me.
A fun night where he made the bigger man miss, made him pay, and then eventually forced him to concede, with Mills Lane having seen enough.
He steps over to Leon and shakes his head and says, I'm not going to let you try to take any more of that.
Probably one of the ugliest human beings. He is the ugliest human being I've ever seen in the flesh. You see his horror movies and you think, oh, no one can look like that. No, this guy truly does.
Another unforgettable night that still surfaces on social media due to its insane size disparity. Back in 2009, David Haye conceded 9 inches of height and 100 pounds of weight against the Russian giant, Nikolai Valuev.
He is a huge man. He's got arms like tree trunks.
He is the biggest heavyweight champion in history, but classically the giants fall.
In a bold move up from cruiserweight, Haye was doing then what Usyk is doing now.
And then we're looking at the biggest prize in sport, the heavyweight championship of the world, and there's a guy called Vladimir Klitschko. Everybody wants that fight, so I've got to give it to him.
However, having most recently outpointed Holyfield, albeit controversially, Valuev's 49-1 record and his sheer size pose some serious danger.
Look at him in there. He fills the ring, doesn't he? He almost engulfs his opponents in there.
On a night that made Haye a household name, the Brit was far too quick and far too nimble, and having broken his hand on the Russian's head.
I know I was landing shots because I caned my hand. I think it was the first, second or third round, really early in the fight.
A huge shot in the final round almost floored the behemoth.
He's got it going with a left hook. What a finish here. Haye gets to Valuev. He certainly made Valuev look very silly, and Haye thinks he's won it, but has he? From London, England, the new heavyweight champion of the world. What a moment.
And I love being involved in events and fights where something very special is on the line. Legacy is on the line.
In the lower weights, size can play a factor with rehydration clauses and weight jumps, but it's usually height that produces these same David and Goliath moments.
We are the best.
And more recently, Canelo finished 2020 by challenging himself against an opponent who took every advantage on paper by a huge margin.
You are no stranger to fighting taller fighters. And recently you fought guys over 6 feet, like a Rocky Fielding, like a Sergey Kovalev. But watching you two on the stage just now, he's probably the biggest and strongest fighter of your professional career. What's the key to winning a fight like this?
Both men were bang on the 168 limit, but Callum Smith would benefit from 7 inches of height and 8 inches of reach.
I believe someone who's tall, ranger, Callum Smith, I believe, would be a nightmare for Canelo, sorry.
Unbeaten in 27 fights, Smith was no pushover either.
Because he's not dancing, he's not moving, he doesn't look like a great defensive fighter. But look at that move right there. Made Smith miss that right hand. He is a fantastic defensive fighter.
But with a high guard and calculated aggression, Canelo would pick his moments perfectly.
Hard right hand, Smith is hurt.
And on this occasion, incredible power and brute strength saw the smaller man dominate.
Hey, who's next?
Who's next? I just said that's 3 now.
I adapt. I adapt to all styles. I adapted for Callum Smith this time around, and I'll prepare for any style.
It's gonna be a good fight, and this is gonna test really the power was working down there. Let's see how your power works against a comfortably bigger guy.
After all, becoming the face of boxing doesn't come easy, and the other man in the argument and fellow PBC superstar also had to overcome similar odds to get there.
Yeah, I think he's making a mistake. Just not the height. He think he's stronger than me, you know. So we just gotta wait and see.
Stepping up for his only fight at 140, Gervonta Davis conceded 6.5 inches of height and 4 inches of reach against Mario Barrios.
It was a different kind of challenge than we've seen Tank against. The guy who's going to come in much taller, longer reach, but that same level of aggression.
I've never seen Tank face someone like this. I think, he's in for a surprise more than anything. Once that bell rings.
He'll find out come fight night, how much, the size difference can make, especially, with 2 weight classes.
With Gervonta Tank Davis daring to be great against by far the biggest opponent he's faced.
Just like Canelo, Tank's power and skill overcame the tail of the tape.
This has started to
And despite a relatively close first half, the later round momentum swung as it always does in the Baltimore Banger's favor.
If he's having success and he's controlling things in there and he's feeling that he has his fight easily won, he can outbox him. Don't fall asleep at the wheel, man. I'm telling you, because all it takes is one shot.
Down twice in the 8th before a crunching body shot folded the larger man in the 11th.
If you've been hit with a liver shot, you know what that feels like, man. And to be able to even just get up from one of those, man, is the hardest ever. It feels like, man, that paralyzes you.
How do you like his height and his reach? What are some things you're going to work in, some tape you're going to see in dealing with that?
Size-wise, Tank Barrios was very similar to another night that featured boxing's most famous giant slayer.
Manny Pacquiao only 2 years ago was a world champion at 130 pounds. So he moves up 2 weight classes, fights Oscar De La Hoya, and now he basically is fighting at welterweight, but fighting a guy 3 weight classes heavier than that.
It's one that we've seen 1,000 times, but never gets old.
Amazing, I survived that fight.
He was a lot heavier too after the weigh-ins.
The night of the fight, I was 148 pounds and Margarito 165 pounds.
Manny Pacquiao was carrying the sport when he stepped up to face disgraced Antonio Margarito following the loaded glove scandal.
These are hard shots from a big man.
Para demostrarle a todo el mundo boxístico que puedo vencer y que estoy de vuelta.
Punching something in Margarito in the last minute or so.
A good big man beats a good little man, sure. But this was no ordinary little man.
Even though ton of heart.
We kind of forget it in this sport. You go back in the 20s to 30s to 40s, even a little bit of the 50s. There were a lot of catchweight fights. And guess what? The smaller guys usually had the advantage over the bigger guys. They were technically better, they were faster. And that came true again tonight.
I can't be denied. This is my moment. I want that green and gold like I told you years ago from day one. It's just my moment, and I'm ready.
The Mexican looked huge that night, but the super welterweight division has continued to evolve.
I apologize. When you face off with him, I chuckled a bit because of the height difference, man.
And now, a man who would dwarf Margarito the same way he towered over Pacquiao in 2010 is 6'6" Sebastian Fundora. Despite a leaky defense in spots, he'd smothered and bullied his opponents to accumulate a 21-fight unbeaten record, but he was yet to face any real knockout power until now.
And you would think on the outside that this guy would use his range and reach, but you know what? He loves to battle it out with guys.
I just knew it was a matter of time. The plan was always to have a big second half, either big enough to walk away with decision or a knockout.
In line with accusations, the bigger man neglected his physical advantages, and Mendoza, working beautifully at range and on the inside, found home in spectacular fashion.
Salas actually told me in the break right before that round, he told me, hey, put some heat on those shots. You know, you're a power puncher.
Un buen swing.
Hands up and I need you to swing hard. Use that right.
And that's literally what I did. You know, I just relaxed my shoulder. You guys saw what happened.
Just to switch it up on you, what was the hardest pro fight of your career?
I'd say the Fury fight. You know, I would say the Fury fight. There were two fights. One would be Guillermo Jones.
A couple inches shorter than Fundora, Guillermo Jones of Panama was still an enormous super welter, and one that would, in later years, move all the way up to heavyweight.
The only other fighter that goes that many weight classes in boxing that I know is like Manny Pacquiao.
7 different ways, man. 7 different ways from 147 to
Jones extremely tall compared to the guy who's got the wingspan of an eagle and not a condor.
When he met Laurent Boudouani, however, back in 1998, he overshadowed the Frenchman by 7 inches.
You know, he's real tall, especially for that weight. He is just tall. There are many heavyweights not quite that tall.
The pair had already drawn 3 months prior, but it was the smaller man that had learnt his lessons.
And that got the attention of Jones. Jones has a great chin.
In this one, there was no knockout, as both men soaked it up and dished it out in equal fashion.
He's been throwing so many punches, he may have worn himself out, and that might be Boudouani's big chance.
But from an extremely close one to call, the hunting, stalking, and aggression of the smaller man swung the scorecards in Boudouani's favor.
And still, WBA junior middleweight champion, Laurent Boudouani. Unbelievable.
We do a lot of talking, at least I do, and thinking about Mayweather and Pacquiao, and they're the 2 best fighters in the world pound for pound, and everyone knows they're not fighting each other. Well, the next 2 best pound for pound are these 2 guys.
A decade later came another fiery rematch that captured the public's imagination.
This is what I do, so we going to war. What, you think I'm doing this for fun? No, I'm going to get them belts. I'm going to go down the Hall of Fame.
Paul Williams was always classed as a huge welterweight. And even moving up in the second half of his career, a middleweight punisher still dwarfed his opponents.
And now they both go out of the ring.
And for Mr. Peterson that he say that Martinez is an old dog, this old dog, he will bite the ass of Williams and then we will talk.
The first fight was an underrated classic. Sergio Martinez took a fight that nobody else wanted and brought the heat from 1 through 12.
Hard right hand, and Williams goes down.
And while he didn't get the nod, he downloaded some important data.
Martinez trainer asked him to throw lead lefts in this round. Haven't seen one.
Question as to who Paul Williams or Sergio Martinez should fight next? I have an answer.
Each other.
A year later, in the second bout, Martinez was looking for an overhand left from the offset.
The only thing I don't like about Paul is he crouches down to the other opponent's size when he just uses size advantage to his advantage.
And in round 2, he'd find it once, twice, and then third time lucky.
Good left hand, and down goes Williams.
When I punches in the air, it don't matter who landing. It could be a little kid. I don't care. If it land right, it's good night. And I know that I went good night.
And that's the worst punch in the world, a punch you don't see.
I've been waiting for an opportunity to come out here and show that I'm a real warrior. I'm a true champion, that I will take whatever it takes to win a fight.
Diego Corrales was another lower weight titan with the skills and the guts to mix it with anyone at any range. And another pairing which eventually merited a 3-fight trilogy came when Chico met Joel Casamayor.
Both Joel Casamayor and Diego Corrales have ruled the 130-pound weight class, and with a win tonight, one of them will take a huge step toward regaining his former status.
The crafty southpaw brought a much more fan-friendly style than that of traditional Cuban boxers. But where Floyd had already put on a clinic against Diego and looked tiny doing it, Casamayor was another inch shorter still.
Casamayor looking extremely sharp.
At the opener, commentator Steve Albert nailed his pre-fight analysis.
Boxer versus puncher, slick versus strong. Casamayor often loops his lefts the first few rounds. Casamayor has to hit Chico while he's coming in. That's got to be part of his strategies.
And despite both men having their moments throughout, in the fourth, his projection rang true. Eventually, too brave for his own good, Corrales was pulled out on doctor's orders.
Sorry. Give me 1 round. It's too bad. Give me 1 round.
Got 2 really bad cuts.
Give me 1 round. 1 round.
It's over, and you can see the reaction. You heard Corrales say, give me 1 more round.
We've had a dreadful month. British boxing has suffered 2 terrible blows. And as Oscar Wilde would have put it, to lose 1 title is unfortunate. To lose 2 is downright carelessness.
Back in 2001, British boxing was struggling.
Big left hook by Barrera.
Prince Nassim had been dominated by Barrera.
His moment of truth has turned into an hour of torture.
And Lennox Lewis had just been knocked out by Rackman weeks later. And where Welshman Joe Calzaghe, another rising superstar, was looking to continue making his mark, the pressure was now greater than ever. As he fell into the shadow of 6'4" super middleweight Mario Vite.
He sure is tall and rangy, Steve. If he can use that jab, he could be dangerous.
Both men had 30-0 records, and ironically, it would only take 30 seconds for one of them to hit the canvas.
And then we went upstairs.
Far too fast, clever, and skillful, Calzaghe landed at will in the opener, putting the German fighter away in less than 2 minutes.
A left hand by Calzaghe. Down goes Vite for the second time.
He went down hard that time, Steve. His head hit the canvas very hard.
Every man must believe in himself. You must have the confidence, no matter what the situation is. World champion, 6'10", 6'12", 400 pounds, muscle bound. You face your problem.
It'd be criminal to make a series like this and not include Mike Tyson.
Do you think you're unbeatable? No one's unbeatable. What's it gonna take to beat you? It's gonna take what's not around today.
Another man who enjoyed negating distance to chop down bigger men.
It's been likened to a blackjack and a sledgehammer by foes who have found it impossible to either avoid or withstand.
All of Mike's opponents were taller, but only David Jaco, Peter McNeely, and Eddie Richardson were 6'6".
It's not if, it's when Mike Tyson wins, and when could be literally any second.
And despite Jaco and McNeely being beaten in a round, the most clinical victory of the lot still came in Tyson's 12th fight.
Really fascinating contest to see how Richardson attempts to use that advantage in height and reach.
At this stage, Tyson was already terrifying, but by literally leaping off the floor just to land punches on Richardson, he somehow appeared even more ferocious.
First punch he threw. Eddie Richardson, looking at the referee, is in much disbelief as we are.
Just 1 minute and 17 seconds, and a clear-cut sign of what was to come.
All right, they can find some fights.
Left hand almost drove Richardson right through the canvas.
What you're saying, Mike, is that you regard Jack Dempsey as one of the really great old generals.
Oh man, I'm crazy about Jack Dempsey. It's because of his ferocious intensity. You know, there's no one like him. No one like him.
Mike's bulldozing style, where he bobbed, weaved, and found ways inside, was a culmination of the great fighters that came before him. None more so than Jack Dempsey, another short heavyweight that toppled giants.
A sensational young tiger with amazing speed and 2 murderous hands. Jeff Willard, the biggest man to hold the title under Marquis of Queensberry rule. Jeff has the muscles of a wrestler and the sheer power of a raging bull when his temper's aroused. He stands 6 feet 6 inches in height and weighs 240 pounds.
And so a similar night, which is now over a century old, came when Dempsey not only went against the odds, but obliterated them.
Some footage of him here in his fight when he won the title from Jess Willard. Jess Willard obviously is the big man. Now this was a very savage fight indeed.
Now you can see what a difference there is in their size. Though a great athlete, The bronze challenger seems almost puny next to the giant he's about to fight.
Jess Willard was the favorite for a reason, but the huge thuds just a minute in said otherwise.
But he's compelled constantly to retreat. What else can he do against the endlessly moving little man? Now watch, there's that big left, and Willard's down.
Down 7 times in the opening round alone, size on this occasion certainly didn't matter.
But Willard can't come out for the 4th round. His nose and cheekbone are fractured, ribs broken, half a dozen teeth knocked out, and he's hardly strength enough to rise and shake hands with his conqueror. In this most unusual of fights, an idol has been born.
That right there, my favorite fight of all time, because it changed the world not just of boxing, but of combat sports forever.